So, meditation. So first of all, meditation is basically about silence. So I don't really need to come. And my dear mother, who was 92, said, silence is the language of the future. So, but since I came, better share a few words. So I think in a way, it's nice in the kind of world we live, which is mostly a secular world, and although we have many other options. Meditation is a bit culturally loaded word. We always think of something exotic, not from here. And then also there are cliches about meditation, like just empty your mind and relax. So relaxing, of course, we can. Emptying your mind, I don't know how long you can do that. But anyway, if you look at the roots, in Sanskrit, bhavana means to cultivate. In Tibetan, gom means to become familiar with something. So obviously, it's like a training. So what do you train in? You play badminton or chess? Not quite the same. So now familiarization could also be cultivating a quality like loving kindness, mindfulness, open presence, pure awareness, loving kindness, rejoicing, and so forth, emotional balance, and all these things. And if you are going to teach in schools or in enterprise, if you say we're going to teach meditation, there might be some resistance, but if you say we are going to help you to have a better attention, better emotional balance, and better prosocial behavior, everybody goes, wow, So familiarization could be also not just cultivating something, but becoming more familiar with the nature of your mind. What is behind all this whirlpool of thoughts? Is there something like called pure awareness that is free from mental constructs, hope and fears, that is the actual most fundamental aspect of mind from which all emotions, recollections, reasoning, perceptions of inner and outer perception comes. Without this luminous quality of the mind, this basic cognitive faculty, none of it will happen. A glass doesn't think anything, doesn't feel anything, doesn't remember anything. It doesn't have this luminous quality of cognition. So that basic nature that we sometimes don't perceive because of so many movements in the mind, we could also become more familiar with that. And that's also one of the aspect of meditation that doesn't necessarily need to have an effortful cultivation. So all those fall within the scope of what we call meditation. So as you see, it's a very generic term, like training. So this is why the idea of cultivating, familiarization, mind training tells more. So now, again, what are we going to train in? So mindfulness and any other things related with presence, with attention, is of course extremely useful, because if your mind is constantly distracted, you're not going to cultivate anything. So that's why most meditation begin with refining that tool of mindfulness and attention and vigilance and presence. And as you know, since many of you are engaged here, both in the well-being program, the Search Inside Yourself program, in this, what do you call that, the G pose. In France, there's a 3G meditation that is sold on the internet, and you can get subscribed for $30, $40, $50, and then depending on that, you get more and more beautiful, young, and all kinds. I don't know. So I'm glad the G pose is not like that. So anyway, so to achieve that, as you do the simple mind exercise to have a clearer, more stable, more calm mind, and you do that often with watching your breath. Why is it a good object of attention? Because you see, if you have one of those red flashing lights that you find sometimes on highways, very sort of aggressively flashing red lights, and it's right in front of your eyes, and you say, focus on that and don't get distracted. Even you're totally distracted, you still see that. There's no way to escape. So there's no help to find out whether you are distracted or not. But breath is something invisible. you really have to pay attention to be aware of the coming and going of your breath. If you are distracted, it's gone, because it doesn't impose itself to your attention no matter what. So therefore, it's a good way to have something that is subtle enough that you can realize at some point you have been distracted because you're just not there anymore, and you can bring back your attention. So as you do often, I'm sure, for those who practice the G pose and search inside yourself and well-being program, so what you do, a balanced posture. You don't have to torture yourself by trying to sit in the full lotus posture unless it's natural to you, but a balanced posture, not too slack or not too sort of, self-induced torpor. When we call that in the neuroscience lab the self-induced absorption in cognitive opacity. Well, we don't want to do that. So instead of clarity, you don't need to close your eyes, but you can just, don't gaze into a very panoramic way, not focusing on anything, and just simply be aware of the coming and going of the breath. Sort of tickling or warm or cold sensation, or the movement of your lungs or abdomen. And just keep on that very simply. And if you are distracted, just like the butterfly who goes out of the flower, and just come back. And don't make a fuss about it. Oh, I've been distracted, I'm no good. There's another kind of distraction. If you are aware that you have been distracted, that's it, you are mindful again. So that's it. Just resume your mindfulness. So let's do that for a few moments and then see how we can embed this caring dimension in it after that. While you do that, thoughts will come. Once they are there, so there's no idea about blocking them. But the problem is not when they come, it's what you do after that. Do they proliferate or do they just dissolve? That's the main thing. So imagine that a thought comes, don't run after it, don't try to block it, let it pass like a bird passing through the sky. If you do so, they will not multiply. And if a bird flies to the sky, you can still very well be aware of the sky that has not changed behind the bird. So that's the pure mindfulness or pure awareness. So imagine that you have done that for 5-10 minutes, whatever you can afford to do. Then you have a relatively more clear, relatively more calm, relatively more stable state of mind. That will come with practice. As you have seen with the neuroscience data, anything you practice will change what you are. So if you have done that within a session, then you can use that calmer, stable, more clear state to cultivate something wholesome like altruistic love or compassion. So altruistic love, remember that beautiful child we saw after the image of saying man is a wolf for man. So when you see and think of such a beautiful child, what do you wish? Except may that child be safe, happy, may he or she flourish in life, may be spared terrible suffering, may those who are around him also enjoy sense of flourishing. So just wishing good to that person. So that's altruistic love. So let's start with something easy, like this young child, and then we can extend it to other people, like strangers. Why not? Why should the sun not shine on everyone? It doesn't cost more. It's just a qualitative experience, not like a cake that we have limited resources. Just extend that to all. That same benevolence. Let this loving kindness or this altruistic love completely fill your mental landscape. If you're distracted, come back to it. If it's sort of become dim, revive it. So nourish it, keep its quality sort of being vivid, sort of intense and clear. And then if you think of, how could I do that with the bloody dictators? So in that case, it's not like wishing success to that person, sort of terrible projects. It's not liking that person. You can have total disgust for the person's action. But still, what shape would altruistic love take in front of this dictator? It becomes the wish of compassion. May the suffering and the causes of suffering be dispelled. And of course, a dictator is a cause of immense suffering. So you might wish, may his action be counteracted. May the cruelty, the indifference, the greed that motivates so much destructive state of mind be dispelled. That you can wish, of course. So that's how we can shift to compassion. Compassion is not fundamentally different from altruistic love. It's actually altruistic love because wishing everyone happiness and the cause of happiness. When it meets suffering, it becomes compassion, which is a kind of the shape that altruistic love takes when it encounters suffering. It is the wish, may the being suffering and the cause of suffering be dispelled. So for that we may visualize intense suffering, and there are so many in this world, and wish may those beings be spared those suffering, may the causes of suffering be remedied. Sort of intense compassion. And if you feel somehow overwhelmed by the magnitude of suffering, you should think that this needs to be met not with some kind of empathic distress, but with the magnitude of compassionate courage. Then sometime we must still feel overwhelmed by so much suffering, though then we can also think of wonderful people imbued with such great qualities of compassion, of knowledge, of wisdom, of dedication to others, social workers, spiritual teachers, great luminaries, those who bring new ideas in this world and rejoice without any other thoughts, just fully appreciate. It's a very altruistic thing to rejoice, because you have nothing to gain from that. Nobody is going to praise you if you rejoice in Gandhi's life. Nobody is going to blame you if you don't have this state of mind. They won't know. So it's really part of altruism to rejoice in the goodness of others and their qualities and achievements. And rejoicing is also the antidote to envy, jealousy, feeling miserable because others have quality, which is pretty silly. And besides altruistic love, compassion, rejoicing or celebrating, there's a fourth thing that we need. That's impartiality. We cannot, compassion and altruism is not a reward for good behavior or for the way people treat you. Compassion aims at removing any suffering, wherever it is, however it manifests. So it's not a moral judgment. Moral judgment exists, but it's not about the way people behave. It's about remedying to the causes of suffering. Therefore, that wish to dispel the causes of suffering can apply to all. Close persons, strangers, even obnoxious people. So we need that powerful wish, like the sun which shines on everything. And when some people tell you, how can I not love more my children and my dear ones and my companions and so forth? Yes, of course. If the sun shines, if life circumstances bring them very close to you, they get naturally more light and more warm. But it's not at the cost of discriminating, just they happen to be there. But the sun still shines on everyone. If you were to concentrate your rays just on those people, actually you will shine less well, less intensely, with less light on those. So everyone is losing. By having this attitude to all, you also love better your loved ones. So this is kind of the much better situation. Just extend your altruistic love, your compassion to all. That's called impartiality. So of course, we did that very short time, but you can see you could expand those periods of silence, which is the real thing. And then also you can switch between those. For instance, if altruistic love turns a little bit into attachment, then go to impartiality. If impartiality becomes a bit of kind of indifference, you impartial but in not caring very much, then move to compassion, thinking of the suffering of beings. And if you're overwhelmed at some point, then move again to rejoicing. So likewise, skillfully, By combining those four, then the four of them grow together, and then you get this profound sort of, we could say, good heart or good-heartedness, this fundamental quality of goodness. So that's what meditation is about. So you see, of course, mindfulness is a precious tool, and that does extreme good in the world, in the clinical world, now in the world of the working place and many other areas. But I think if we never lose sight that mindfulness should go always and unambiguously with a caring quality, then it will have its full potential to help, I think, even more. So, thank you. And at the end of any practice, there's a kind of, in the same way that in the beginning we thought, why I'm doing that, not just for me, for all sentient beings, at the end of the conclusion, sort of dedicate. Or whatever good we did this morning, may that benefit everyone, why not? And it's not like a piece of cake that you put in pieces. Everyone gets everything. That's a good deal. So thank you. So if you have any question, welcome.
Thank you so much for the talk and the meditation. I'm over here. So my question is, how can our micro actions really help people who are quite far away from us and are experiencing, extremist violence in different parts of the world?
Yes.
And somewhat relatedly, how can consumer technology, or how can technology in general, like Google, Facebook, everything here in Silicon Valley, really help accelerate social change?
Well, you see, I remember once when I did a small book called The Art of Meditation, or I think it's called Why Meditate in English. There was the time of the Iraq War, and then people said, how this can help? This is, you're meditating, that's great, but how this can help globally? And then it's true that when the forest is in fire, what are you going to talk about the sparks? But the problem is the fire started with the spark, and there's no war or discrimination or massacre that didn't start with hatred, or at least with devaluing other. If you value other and you're concerned by other, then how can you exert harm if you're genuinely concerned with the well-being of somebody? So it did start with the mind. There's no war that didn't start with someone, somebody, a group, sort of contagiously having this dehumanization of the other, making it sometimes of reducing it to the state of thinking of like animals, inferior, and so forth and so forth. So that's why, the fact that immediately a change of mind, first, will not solve immediately a conflict that is raging somewhere. But after all, conflicts are made with people. People have different states of mind. And that's exactly what I mentioned earlier about the articulation point between individual change and societal change. A culture that is based on non-violent values, on compassion, altruistic love, is much more likely that they will not resort to violence to solve conflict. They will not impose terrible things onto others. So it starts with someone, then it grows, family, the community, the working place, the society, the village, the culture, and then culture can become also contagious or succeed better than other cultures, which are more or individualistic, everyone against everyone. So the evolution of culture can favor that, and it starts with the people. A society is made of people. So, if you have a culture that is non-violent, it's because generations of people have cultivated those virtues. And if someone is promoting violence, then your children will also grow in that environment. So it's not the immediate magic solution, but it's the only way that we gradually change individuals and, by extension, society. So we should not worry that immediately I may not have an effect, some kind of magic vibes going to solve conflicts. But the more there are people thinking that way, especially in the global world, virtual world, where altruistic people have a tendency to get together and cooperate, while the free riders, the really selfish guys, they kick each other's leg all day long. So as a group, They have a selective disadvantage to a group of altruists who cooperate. That's clear. All the models have shown that. So we should not get discouraged. It's one by one, thought after thought, emotion after emotion, individual after individual, and somehow you create a culture. That may take a few years or some whatever, but you can make a real difference because everyone can make a difference. And that difference sort of ripples out. So that's why movements started. When I came first here, I think there was not much question about G pose and
bowel movements.
Huh?
We have bowel movements.
Yes, bowel movements. So, within a number of years, less than 10 years, it become part of the culture. And then the people who do that, they will go about their activities in different ways. So that's what the culture is about. Yeah. Whoever, yes.
Hi, thank you. I just loved that image of mindfulness versus caring mindfulness, the sniper versus caring mindfulness. Can you provide a little inspiration for how we as an organization that wants to provide things with the right language, the right approach, so that things can scale in organizations that don't have exposure to this, we can sort of incorporate this idea of caring mindfulness into everything that we do?
We thought a little bit about that about economics first. Because you say, if you take the definition of the Homo economicus, I don't know if you are too familiar with that, but there's somebody called Francis Edgeworth. He was one of the founder of classical modern economics. He said there's no place for altruism in economic systems. Maybe he was not a bad person, but he says it's not about economics. So of course it's a big caricature. And Amartya Sen said, for example, it's absurd to think that people only think of promoting their personal interests. It's not like human beings don't function like that. They are not so reductionist. So to postulate everything on that. So then we say, can we have a compassionate, caring economics? If you say that to mainstream economists, they say, it's very nice. And of course I agree that individually we can and should be altruistic, but it's not about economics. Basically, economics is economics. So, okay, be altruistic, but altruistic economics, who is going to take us seriously? But today, if you say about inequalities, about environments, I don't care. That discourse doesn't work anymore. It's like saying, let's put back slavery. I don't care a damn about the environment, and I don't care a damn about poverty in the world. Who can say that? You might, but basically it's really the extreme fringe. So that's why it's more acceptable. And that's why economics like Dennis Snower and others speaks of caring economics as a real important concept. You could expose that in Davos Economic Forum. It's acceptable because it makes sense. And it's not, the words are chosen properly. So likewise, I think the concept of caring mindfulness, if you bring it to different companies that are maybe not necessarily so enlightened in the beginning. If you go to in the corporate world, it's not always that they put altruism as the core component. But the notion of caring, they can all resonate with that. We need more caring at the workplace with each other. You need to be more caring in your family. So the idea of a leadership, being more of service. I remember in Davos when there was a evening on the leadership I can remember the name properly, Price Cooper Water or something like that. I don't know where the water comes. So anyway, they had invited Christine Lagarde and the head of the New York Times to discuss leadership. And Christine Lagarde could not come, so one smart guy thought, hey, would you come? I said, oh, of course, but they will be quite surprised to see me instead of Christine Lagarde. Anyway, I went there and I said, what could I say about leadership? And I thought of people I admire, some wonderful doctors or people I met in the imaginary world who have a big organization with them and still maintain the spirit. I thought, well, leadership is to serve the purpose of what you are doing. Google has to achieve certain things, though you have to serve doing what Google needs to do to survive and prosper. Then you have to serve the people who works here by providing a nice environment to work. You have all these people going to the swimming pool at 10 o'clock in the morning, but they do their work the rest of the time. and you have nice food everywhere. And last time it was 100 feet. I don't know if you still have that. So serve the people that they feel happy to be there, and then fulfill their aspiration, and then serve society by not, by doing something that's not harmful to society. Like selling substances like tobacco that kills 6 million people every year. That's 100 million in a century. You don't serve society by telling lies. So that's not serving. So likewise, this idea of service, I think caring goes well with this idea. So I think it's an acceptable thing. So then when you practice and introduce something like mindfulness, which is pretty new, in France, when they were speaking to introduce meditation in corporate world, nobody would go for that. They think it's just not, it's not our thing. I mean, now yoga, a CEO can go to do yoga, nobody minds, but it took 20 years. So meditation is still, so mindfulness, people accepted that, and it's thanks to John Kabat-Zinn and all this work. Now in the clinical world and then corporate world, is widely accepted, a mindful revolution. But then, if it's not done properly by the right people, you could imagine using it for just efficiency and cold efficiency, so therefore make mindful psychopath. So that's why I think caring is very acceptable, politically correct, you could say, and therefore the notion of caring, I mean, I think in our world, I don't see why it should meet any resistance. Why you would take that compassion, altruism, a little bit more, although it's the same thing, but it's a bit too far from the usual preoccupation of those corporate words, for instance. So it's skillful, like meditation in the school. If you say, we'll teach you attention, emotional balance, and social behavior, any parents and any teacher will go for it. It's a meditation in school, they say, I heard, from Mark Greenberg, who was an educator, he said when he worked in Texas or somewhere to put meditation in school, parents threatened to pull out their kids if they were teaching meditation. They thought they were going to indoctrinate them in some weird Oriental metaphysics or something.
Two more questions.
Thank you for your inspiring and interesting talk. I cannot see clearly the difference or the need of saying caring, mindfulness, and mindfulness, because for me, according to my experience, when I practice mindfulness, this caring feeling or need to take care of myself or others is born naturally.
Yes. So that's exactly what John Kabat-Zinn said, and he's right. If you do it properly, with the right instructor in the right way, he says it always witness a strong opening to others. Great. But it's still sort of an expected byproduct. And it depends how it's taught. But to be, again, take the sniper example. He's mindful, no question. So he's not caring. So you could have that. So just to avoid that and to reinforce that among the qualities that mindfulness should bring, caring is one of the most powerful. And actually many studies have shown, like Tanya Singer's study, 1-year study, that mindfulness alone, reduce your stress, doesn't bring prosocial behavior. Although people say they're actually more caring, but in behavior they don't really make much difference. So nothing wrong, nothing to put it down, but the scientific results show that it doesn't per se automatically bring about more prosocial behavior, while loving kindness metta does in a big way. So when those results will be published, I think that will also clarify the situation that yes, when it's well done, probably yes, but not necessarily with every instructor, not with every practitioner. So then why not mentioning it so clearly that you can't escape it? Yes. And then also about, you have a lot of programs like, such and such yourself, the well-being, the mindfulness training, MBSR, MBCT. And a few friends thought we should also gather meditation instruction that include very clearly the notion of compassion and altruism. So there is an online thing that will be full. There's a trailer now, but will be completely online from August. It's called Imagine Clarity. And I participated in helping them to build up those apps and to sort of, among other teachers, I'm not a teacher, but to share those instructions. And so you can look at that as well. I think there's already a trailer on that, Imagine Clarity. And also to do things like what Meng is teaching with this 10-second meditation, I think is very powerful. And one example that I offered to Meng to use is why only 10 seconds, but actually it's more than 10 seconds. And the example, if you open a flask of perfume for 10 seconds and close it, perfume still will last longer. And if you open it often enough for 10 seconds, it will be there all the time. So it's just actually setting something in motion. It's not just 10 seconds and then we go back bashing people and slapping them.
Let me clarify the 10-second thing he's talking about. The 10-second exercise that Matthew's talking about is every now and then just spend 10 seconds, identify two human beings, and secretly wishing for them to be happy. So that is very powerful.
So people can say they have not 10 seconds. People say, I don't have time, I don't have 20 minutes, but 10 seconds, nobody can dare to say I don't have 10 seconds.
That's the last question.
Thank you. Losing things from my pocket. When I first encountered loving kindness practice, it seemed very conceptual. I wish you joy. I wish you peace, without a feeling quality. Sometimes a real feeling of warmth is there, and I can feel it. And when I accompany those thoughts of, may you be happy, may you be free from suffering, with that feeling, it becomes much more powerful. But sometimes that feeling isn't there, and I don't know how to generate it effectively or consistently. Do you have any advice for that?
So, I remember not far from here many years ago, I met Paul Ekman, who's a great scientist on emotion. He asked me this question, when you feel compassion, do you have to feel the suffering of others? That time, I had not worked with people working on empathy, so I was not sure, because sometimes yes, sometimes not. So I was not sure. Then we distinguished nicely empathy, compassion, and so forth. So in short, when you think of all this suffering, just thinking with empathy, like those Romanian children, there is a strong emotional component that then triggers and should bring about loving kindness and compassion. But also there's a cognitive aspect. In Buddhism, we think that suffering is not just headache or being tortured or terrible things like that, which is obvious. Why the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering first. We don't need the Buddha to tell us that headache or toothache is a suffering. But he meant much more than that. He meant as long as your mind is deluded and you strongly grasp the solidity of permanence and friends and enemies and those solidifications of reality and distorting reality, you are born to suffer. This is not very emotional. The root is distorting reality, brings hatred, jealousy, all that. So you can, of course, take compassion about the root of suffering, but it's not very emotional, but you understand the deep cause of suffering. So depending upon times, we have seen many times the Dalai Lama having tears in the middle of teachings, and he said, last 30 years, when he does his 4 hours of meditation in the morning, there's hardly any morning where he didn't have tears thinking of the suffering of beings. So you could say it's emotional, but also he meditates on the sort of lack of solid reality, and I'm sure it's not tears that come at that time, it's understanding, wisdom that reinforces and deepens his compassion. So those two doesn't have to be always emotional. There's this cognitive dimension that is very important, especially in Buddhism, but I think in general, because you go at the root of suffering.
Thank you so much, my dear friend, for benefiting us, for teaching, and for being alive in this world.
Really?
Thank you.
Let's see how long it lasts.